I just did a quick head count, and there's some 650 of us in this room tonight. Yeah. I've been doing these for a lot of years, and this is definitely the biggest turnout that we've seen, which obviously indicates that we have a great deal of interest in what's going to be coming up this Wednesday and Saturday, and then the aftermath of that for the next 4 years, of course. I'm President and CEO of the Greater Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce, and I'll start as I always do by offering respect to Nanaimo First Nations, on whose unceded territory we're holding this event tonight. Welcome to the Select Council Candidates Debate hosted by the Chamber and our Nanaimo. Thank you for being here, and thank you for engaging in the 2018 municipal election, a pivotal event for our community. I think we'd all agree. I don't think anybody would argue that the last 4 years have been tumultuous. In fact, that would be understating what this community has been through. In the 2014 election, the Chamber worked to promote a 25% increase in voter turnout, but alas, that number failed to deliver better governance over the past 4 years. This year, we're urging citizens to do more than just get out and vote. Our theme for 2018 is Vote Smart. We're here tonight to help you do just that. Educating and informing yourselves to help you make the best possible choices when you mark your ballot to give the community its best shot at good governance. That simply means an efficient government and bureaucracy, an effective and highly functioning team around the council table, a chance to regain the trust of our community partners, and the tools to rebuild our city's image into one that we could be proud of again. So thank you tonight to our timekeepers down in front of us here. They'll be coming up and presenting the timekeeping rules and regulations as they come along. David Hatchman of VSP Media. Jamie Whitmore from YPN, who was just introduced to me a few minutes ago. The event is being live streamed to the Chamber of Commerce Facebook page by Alan Felker of Vancouver Island Television in the center of the room here. And this will also be available for viewing after the event. Thank you, Alan. Thanks to local media for their support, the Nanaimo Bulletin, The Wave and the Wolf, Nanaimo News Now, Coast FM, and Mervunger at nanaimonet.com. When we announced the Chamber would be taking this bold approach to the information forums this election, we got a little pushback. I pointed out that I've never produced one of these events and had a voter come up to me afterwards and ask to hear more from those candidates who really would never make the cut. The retort is that the Chamber's process is undemocratic and all candidates aren't given an equal chance. I say there are many opportunities to engage with candidates, but with 40 candidates, every information session has its limitations. I truly believe our limitations actually work in your benefit. Tonight we have invited 25 candidates who responded to our questionnaire. 2 of these sitting councillors are down the hall tonight doing their job and could not be here with us. All of the responses that we received were posted to our Nanaimo and the Chamber website. I invite you to take a read of those and make your own conclusions. I would like to thank the members of our Nanaimo for their collaboration on governance initiatives with us over the past 10 months. That would include the Civic Leadership Speakers Series this past spring. Here is our Nanaimo rep, Fred Patchy, with a few words and the introduction of our moderator.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for being here this evening to attend this very important pre-election event, one which our Nanaimo is very pleased to co-host together with the Greater Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce. Our Nanaimo was created about 18 months ago to achieve better governance, better city planning, a more effective, principled, representative, and productive municipal governance for Nanaimo. Before that, most of us had been members of No Vote 2017, the group which successfully fought the placing of an event center, so-called, on prime waterfront land. Our volunteers have literally spent hundreds of hours helping both voters and potential candidates be as informed as possible about good governance. Not only during this campaign, but also past spring, when we partnered with the Chamber on the Speaker Series on Civic Leadership, during the 2017 by-election, and at a host of other events. We are almost at the end of this long and pretty exhausting journey, and I believe that this is an appropriate time for me to give a public thank you to all our members and supporters, to the candidates, to the media present here tonight, who incidentally have reported us very fairly over these months, and of course, to everyone, last one of you present here tonight. I especially want to thank our Nanaimo member, Wanda Thompson, who has spent most of the first 2 years of her retirement tirelessly striving to assist Nanaimo find better governance. Wanda, stand up, take a bow. So after tonight, it is up to you, the voters. Please, please do your homework. Think critically. Vote with purpose, and please vote with wisdom. For the future of our great city depends on the choices that you will be making this week. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dominic Abassi, the news director for Nanaimo News Now, who is going to be your moderator for the proceedings of this evening. Thank you all very much.
Thanks a lot, Fred. Appreciate that. And thank you to all of you for being here this evening. As you've heard, it's an incredibly important time. Every election is incredibly important, and I think it's pretty fantastic to see this many people in the room and trying to get informed before they make their decision. Now, right off the hop, I'm going to bring up our timekeeper, Mr. David Hatchman, and he will explain to you what you'll see with his assortment of colorful flags throughout the night at the front of the room. So, David?
Hello, good evening. It's quite simple, actually. The candidates will have 60 seconds to answer the question posed to them by Dominic, and also 60 seconds to do their opening remarks, their introduction, as it were. There will be visual cues at the 30-second mark. Halfway, the green flag will be waved back and forth. At the 45-second mark, the orange flag will be waved, and at the 60-second mark, the red flag. If the candidate is still talking at this juncture, it becomes interactive. We ask you to give an audio cue in case they missed the visual one, and we will graciously thank them off the stage so that we can proceed with the questions. Thank you.
Couple of housekeeping items for all of you. Please take this opportunity to make sure that your cell phones are turned off or on silent mode, as we don't want any loud ringing during the proceedings here. We do request, aside from the cue, if a candidate has gone a little bit too long, please hold your applause. You'll have a chance to applaud as each group exits the stage and the next group comes on. So please hold your applause during the commentary, during the debate. That goes for any heckling, shouting out. Obviously, that's not what we're here for tonight. A brief synopsis of how this is going to work. It's a bit of a different format, I think, certainly than I've worked in before. The candidates have been split up into 5 groups of 5, although there are some groups that don't have the full complement. They will be called up onto the stage. Each group has been assigned their own theme. That is what they will debate for the evening. When they come up, they'll be given 60 seconds to introduce themselves, not about the theme, but just who they are, why they're running, what they're involved in. I will then pose a question to the table, and they will have 60 seconds each to answer that question. The order of response will move clockwise, and the first responder has been randomly chosen by drawing cards. And you'll notice that the order of seating is done alphabetically. After that, we will move into an open period of roughly 8 to 10 minutes where we will allow the candidates to debate each other. The idea is to try and achieve a bit of an environment like an actual council meeting. I'll serve as the chair, so to speak. They'll raise their hand, I'll keep a speakers list, and it will be my job to ensure that that section moves equitably and efficiently and stays on topic. I will ask follow-up questions if the debate begins to wane. And again, we're looking for some interactive discussions up here at the front. Let us get started with this evening. And first we'll bring up Group D to discuss our first theme. Please join me on stage, group number D. Now, during the random pulling of cards, Ms. Erin Hemmons will begin with an introduction, 60 seconds.
Thank you. My name is Erin Hemmons. I am a coroner for the city and a community health consultant. I'm also the mother of 2 young boys, the wife of a local business owner, and an active volunteer. My entire 15-year career has been about working with community and for community. From helping to create the framework for a new healthcare profession in Nova Scotia that was devoted entirely to families, to leading innovative, award-winning healthcare initiatives here in Nanaimo, to supporting families as they navigate the loss of a loved one. I am driven and inspired to build bridges between institutions and the people they are meant to serve. I truly believe that public service is an honor and a privilege. I commit to giving 110% and bringing all of my experience, dedication, and passion to the role of City Councillor. I would like to work for you and with you to create a city that we're all proud to call home.
Thank you. Mr. Lloyd McElwain.
Good evening. My name is Lloyd McElwain. I decided to run for council after I was in Toronto at the end of August, and people kept asking me, what is going on with the Nanaimo City Council? I was surprised, to say the least, but quite frankly, I was embarrassed. And I felt strongly that I had to do something. Given my background, I decided to run for councillor. I've been a lawyer for 29 years, practicing immigration for the last 27 years. I have a master's degree in mathematics. I have a Bachelor of Science in Math and Physics. In the past, I've had many years' experience at all levels of politics. I ran in 2004 federally. I will approach matters critically and objectively, listening in a meaningful fashion what the position of others are. Keep in mind that there may be other points of view that are as valid as mine. Being able to adjust my position based on what others are presenting. Constructing solutions in a...
Thank you. Nicely done. Ms. Alexis Peterson.
Hi, my name is Alexis Peterson. I've been a social worker for 35 years and worked in all aspects of the social institutions and the custodial institutions. I have a Bachelor of Social Work and a Master's in Criminology. I decided to run in my last year of working when I watched the council meetings and felt that I had the skills from working in corrections and working with very difficult people to be able to come to solutions, and do so in a way that is respectful, that is listening, and we can all come to the middle to try and agree. We have a communication system that is in bad need of disrepair. I really think that that needs to be revitalized through the committees and through the neighborhood associations, and I'm committed to working extremely hard for the city of Nanaimo.
Thank you. Mr. Trent Whaley.
My name is Trent Whaley. I'm an industrial computer tech, working with others to solve problems using logic, research, and critical thinking is what I do. Nanaimo has become unaffordable for a large portion of residents. Many are about one missed check away from being on the street. Polarization and conflict have spread into our city and brought confrontation to our streets and council chambers. Compassion has been replaced with malice. Homelessness, food security, climate, social divisions, all are not a city problem. Not a city problem, but still within the city's power to assist. With clear title, the city can now lease land for cooperative and subsidized housing and community spaces. With clear policies, already in official plans, we can reduce runoff and car dependence. With clear support for creative communities of all cultures, we can come together. With clear heads and open hearts, we can rebuild relationships between council, staff, residents, and First Nations.
Thank you. We'll now move into the theme for this group. I'll pose a question. Mr. Whaley will lead out, moving over to Ms. Hemmons and so on. They will each again have 1 minute to respond to the question, and then we'll move into a debate period. The theme for this group that they randomly chose: internal collaboration, critical thinking, and decision making. We've seen over the last 4 years a lot of divisive and polarizing politics in this city. Legal battles, censure hearings, negative behaviors. Some say council members must be independent thinkers, while our system of local government requires that they be collaborative decision makers. Beginning with you, Mr. Whaley, as a councillor, how would you reconcile these apparently conflicting requirements to be at once critical and independent thinker and to work collaboratively to ensure a productive council that serves the city well?
The perfect is the enemy of the good. Like many candidates, I've charted a bold course towards livability, affordability, and cooperation, directly into the headwinds. Decades of urban sprawl, car dependence, and conflict. To reach our goals, council must work together. We won't always be going directly towards my specific goals, but as long as we are improving Nanaimo, progress is being made. Council will make decisions I disagree with. Civic government is not a dictatorship. Citizens should expect and demand lively debate from their council, but also expect and demand that that debate be debate, not arguments, posturing, and name-calling. They should also demand that city business happen in public at committees, public engagement sessions, and open council, and rarely in camera, and almost never as litigation.
Thank you. Ms. Hemmons?
This question is framed in such a way that it pits independent thought against the collaborative process, but I actually don't see those two as in opposition. In my experience, good leaders are able to do both. You can be a critical thinker who works well with others. This isn't revolutionary, it's actually a baseline of being a good leader. I have a number of examples I can draw from where I've had to weigh my own understanding of an issue and reach my own conclusions, and then enter into conversation and decision making with a group who have also done their own homework. It's not easy, but it's a powerful process that, if done well, ends in good decisions which represent a broad range of perspectives. What I think this question is truly getting at is how can we respectfully and effectively engage as a group of individuals? For me, that's about disposition and life experience. It's also about understanding your role and being constantly aware of the fact that the decisions you're making are not about you or your priorities. They're about creating a strong and healthy community for everyone.
Thank you. Mr. McElwain?
Thank you. First, being a lawyer for 29 years, I've had to be an independent thinker to represent my clients properly and have to work collaboratively to come to the best solution that everybody can live with, even though they may not like it. First, doing the work yourself. Critically analyzing the issues in objective fashion, not being unduly influenced by the wishes of others. Then, this approach gives me the freedom to think outside the box. Then, presenting in a clear fashion. As far as collaboration is concerned, being transparent and dealing with others with integrity and setting out your position, how you came to it, and the reasons for it. Keeping in mind this is not a game where one councillor wins and another loses, but a team effort. Listening to all groups, especially the people, where the outcome is for the good of everyone. In a productive collaborative, it is not whether you get everything you want, but whether we all get something that we can live with. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Peterson?
When we have a new council, that it will be a new group. And groups always go through different stages of development. Any group in the world does this. And what I think we need to do is we need to do about 3 days training where we find out who we are, where our priorities are, where are the things that we can collaborate on, and where the differences are. So by the time we get to council, we have a pretty good idea of who each other is, how to talk to each other, and where we go on from there. Once we have achieved that, then you can work collaboratively even when you have independent thinking. I've done that all my life as a correctional officer and as a protection social worker. There's a skill set that you can learn to do that so that you can have conflict in a way that doesn't abuse the person, that doesn't end in fight, and you can come to some kind of agreement. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll now move into a bit more of a fluid period of debate and allow the candidates to talk about what they've heard, what they've said, and possibly pitch some further questions as well. And again, choosing a random speaking order for this to begin, Mr. Whaley was the one who selected the card to lead us out. So please, based on what some of the other candidates said and what you said, please expand.
I believe what we are all saying is council should collaborate together for the good of Nanaimo. There's really, it's hard to find much more to say about it than that, aside from individuals touting their own experience. I worked in IT for a long time, before that in a convenience store, which had particularly difficult customers because of its location. So we're all saying collaborate and do the city's business.
One part of being involved in council is weighing your own ideals, your own beliefs, your own experience with what you're hearing from staff, their expert opinions, but also what your constituents are telling you as well. When you make decisions and you picture yourself as a councilor making those decisions, what do you feel deserves the most weight in your decision-making process? Is it the opinion of staff? Is it what you're hearing from your constituents? Or is it your own personal beliefs and experience that you bring to the table? Which part do you see as having the most weight in your decision-making, and explain why, Erin?
I think people aren't elected on their policies. People are elected on their values. And so for me, if folks have elected me based on the values that I have shared with them during the campaign, then it's realistic that I can use those values to weigh my decisions going forward. So from a foundational level, my values are where I begin. But then you layer on top of that, the expert opinion of staff who has information that I don't and experience that I don't. And then of course, weighing in with residents who have experiences that I don't and information that I don't. So for me, it's the foundation is my values, because that's what got me to the council seat. But at the end of the day, it's really about gathering all of the information and probably weighing it quite equally.
I think it's very important to take a look at all the point of views, especially the people, including staff, including council. The most important thing is to be able to analyze it critically, to be able to look at the problem objectively, and to know when you're coming to a good conclusion, a good solution. I think that's the most important thing. You have to discuss it with everybody else. You have to listen to what they have to say. You have to adjust your own point of view according to the information that's presented at all levels. And I think that's the most important in the essence of coming to a good conclusion. Thank you. Thank you.
I guess I see it as a process of research and investigation. It is probably one of the hardest things to do to represent everybody in a fair way without being influenced unduly. But you can do that by the research you do. First of all, the staff has information that we don't know. They're the experts often. The residents have information and they're the experts of their neighborhood. You have the council, their own personal information, and the business community. All of those pieces have to be put together and weighed to see which is the overriding, and see if there's some consensus. That's what I would be working for, a consensus, before we actually implemented anything.
City of Nanaimo has multiple existing plans that have been developed through public consultation. The official community plan, the transportation master plan, the downtown waterfront initiative plan, etc. those would be the foundation as they're already developed through community consultation. Many issues are not discussed, though, in that, and those would need to be weighed with the opinions of staff and the opinions of constituents and the opinions of other governments and what other governments in the area and throughout North America have found successful or not successful.
Ms. Hemmons and then Ms. Peterson.
One of the amazing things that has happened to me during this campaign is that I have made really strong relationships with other candidates. And I think for me, that shows what that means for me is that if I'm struggling with learning about transportation or I'm struggling with learning about planning, I have people that I can go to who can help explain, because I think it's really unrealistic to expect that a councillor will hold all of the knowledge that they need to hold, especially on day one. It's going to be a very, very steep learning curve. So for me, collaboration is about it's about internal relationships as much as it is about doing our own homework, because it's impossible for us to have all of the information at the outset.
Ms. Peterson?
I'd like to pick up on the point of my colleague there. We have some incredibly good plans on the community development plans and the charter, the community plan, neighborhood plans, and we really should be taking those off the shelf and looking to see where they're at. I was looking at one of the transportation plan, and it's quite out of date in a number of areas. And you're right, we don't have to invent the wheel, but if we have that collaborative agreement between us to work, we should be able to really move forward.
Mr. McElwain?
I agree. I think it's important that you discuss issues with other councillors. However, you have to keep in mind is that you're representing the people. It's your vote. You have to vote based on what you have assessed as a situation, independently of all the other councillors, but listening to everybody's point of view and adjusting. I think it's very important that you be able to adjust your point of view based on what other people are saying. Look at the facts and build a solution accordingly.
Mr. Whaley?
I think following on that sticking to the existing plans that have already been gone through public consultation does not interfere with making your own decision. There's a lot of room for interpretation in how those plans are implemented. There's plenty of room within the existing plans and in upcoming renewals of those plans for the individual councillors' interpretations of them.
Okay. Any further comments from the group? Okay. I'd like to thank you all for your time here this evening. Thank you. I'd like to now call up to the stage discussing our second theme of the night, Group B. Group B. All right, everybody settled? We'll begin with the 1-minute introductions, and randomly selecting to open us out is Miss Wendy Pratt. Wendy?
Thank you. I'm Wendy Pratt. I am a native daughter of Nanaimo, and I love this community, and I want it to grow and I want it to thrive. All of my professional career was in administration, and the last 20 were involved in hospice palliative care, and specifically the Nanaimo Community Hospice, where I served as executive director for 15 years. That was a fertile learning ground, and one where I was able to develop leadership skills, financial stability, looking at the big picture and trying to translate that into a local picture. We have so much going for us, and Nanaimo is on the cusp of great things. And I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of creating a vital and strong community. So whether it's hospice or whether it's as a council person, creating a vital community is where I want to be. Thank you.
Mr. Guy Beaulieu.
Good evening, everyone. Since graduating from university, I've had a career in business, in human resources and labor relations, working for both unions and large companies. I currently do this as a consultant. My work has included finding solutions to conflict situations, understanding complex financial, social, legal, and engineering information, providing collaborative leadership to members of teams to develop common goals, and most importantly, listening to the views of others before reaching a conclusion. I've served as a vice president on the board of a credit union and on its audit committee. I've raised a family here with 2 of my 3 children still living here, along with 3 grandchildren. I'm currently a volunteer at the Nanaimo Food Bank, and I'm hoping that you will see me as your elected representative on City Council on October 20th. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Don Bonner.
Hello, my name is Don Bonner, and I have the experience, the leadership skills, and the vision to bring our city forward for the next 4 years. I would invite you to visit my website, bonner.ca, to learn about my experience and my background here. My key platform is economic development with the idea of bringing high-tech industry to this area of ours. We have all the building blocks that high-tech companies and employees who like to work for high-tech companies have in this city. In addition to that, I would like to see us develop our arts and culture in our city. I want to see us use the city resources as a partnership with the arts and cultural community to build a lively and vibrant arts and cultural community. And finally, I'd like to see build on our partnerships we have with all the organizations that work in our city, and including Nanaimo and Sinawas. And because I believe the prosperity of those nations is equal to ours.
Thank you. Mr. Pele Gouda.
Hi, everybody. It's so good to see you here. What a turnout. I'd like to just quickly re-acknowledge that we're on Nanaimo territory. And maybe, we've got 60 seconds, so I gotta do this quick, but maybe if I could just get an informal poll. Put your hand up if you're quite happy with how the previous council directed themselves. Sorry, is this thing on? Okay, so maybe it's time for change then. That's what I'm gathering from that little informal poll. I believe that as well, and this might sound cheesy, but that might be appropriate given the name. I believe that I ought to do as much good as possible. That's what I want to do, social good. And I decided some time ago that the best way to do that is through the political process. Sometimes politics is a bad word to people. I don't think so. I think it's the best means by which we can make change for our society, make positive progress, and if you vote for me on October 20th, I will do my best to do just that.
Thank you. Ms. Zenny Martman.
Good evening. My name is Zenny Martman. In the 2016 to 2019 strategic plan, the City of Nanaimo committed to 5 values: economic health, environmental responsibility, social equity, cultural vitality, and healthy lifestyle. These are the values I support. I want to contribute to ensuring that Nanaimo will be the most vibrant, safest, and healthiest city to live, work, and play in. I have lived here for 30 years. My career, public service, and community work have given me the skills that are needed to be effective on City Council. I am ready to listen and to get down to work, to include public consultation and consensus, because it's not about the problems, it's about the solutions. So on October 20th, I ask for your vote because I want to be your voice.
Thank you. We'll now move into the theme and the opening question for this group. They randomly pulled theme number 2, which is, urban planning, livable city, transportation, walkability, and community planning. Nanaimo is a community in transition and at a very critical point in its development and growth. Council decisions about urban planning are crucial to guide how we move forward successfully to create a city for everyone. Residents have expressed for years concerns about a lack of sidewalk connectivity, an outdated community plan, shelved neighborhood plans, and ineffective and inefficient public transportation. Ms. Martman will lead us out on this. And the question is, what are the top 3 priorities you think a new council should address to create a well-planned and livable city for residents and businesses alike?
Thank you. The top 3 priorities that I would choose are economic development, the transportation plan, and housing. It is economic development that can attract new businesses, create employment, and help create a desirable city. The Economic Development Department needs to include tourism, arts, culture, and heritage, and support their long-term strategies. The transportation plan describes how a city can be livable and accessible. It is time to review and action some of the plans to improve our neighborhoods, making walking and cycling a more comfortable way to move through our city for people of all ages and abilities, and increasing the quality, convenience, and accessibility of transit for trips, like to the ferry and the airport. Third, we must commit to achieving the priorities outlined in the affordable housing strategy. For if we improve the lives of the most vulnerable and marginalized in our city, we will improve the lives for all of us.
Thank you. Ms. Wendy Pratt.
Thank you. When I think about this question, I think about things like accessibility, about green spaces, about safety for all ages, school children, seniors, cyclists, pedestrians. Nanaimo is growing. It's expected to double by 2040. I don't know whether that's going to happen or not, but we need to be ready, and urban planning is a big part of that. We have some wonderful plans out there that have been created by community groups. The South Downtown Waterfront, the Terminal Nickel Corridor, and I think we have a wonderful opportunity as a new council not only to do it right, but to do it better, to look at these plans and decide what can we keep, what should we throw away, but how do we move these forward in a way that is going to make our community good for people from 8 to 80. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Beaulieu?
My top priorities for the new council would be to a thorough review of the existing plans, such as community and neighborhood plans, to ensure they're still relevant to our current needs. We have to look at ways of increasing the efficiency of public transportation by such means as densification of some areas of Nanaimo in order to discourage continued urban sprawl that makes transit inefficient. And we have to look at the utilization of technology for better route management. Also, we have to work at encouraging the use of non-motor vehicle transportation by improving pedestrian access and bicycle lanes with separation. Completing the waterfront walkway would be one of my priorities along that line. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bonner?
Council needs to start the work to hire a permanent CAO. Then with that person, we need to rebuild the capacity of our staff. It is our CAO and staff who will be implementing the plans we have for our city, all of us working together to implement those plans. Then we need to work on the development of our community vision, our strategic plan, a renewed official community plan, and our branding, as they will be our map for building a well-planned, livable, and prosperous city. We need to take off the shelf the community plans that have been developed over the last decade and look at renewing them and then putting them into our strategic plan for implementation in a staged and planned manner that fits within our budget. As part of that vision, I would like to see our city move down the path to become a city of reconciliation. We need to promote Indigenous people's arts, culture, awareness, and understanding, including looking at incorporating the communal language into our entrance signs of the city and adding traditional names on landmarks as we replace signage.
Thank you. Mr. Guda?
I think in regard to urban planning, community planning, top 3 priorities for me for council would be, and I'm going to speak in broad strokes here and then see if I can get some more precise stuff in a short time limit, but making sure that our plans are meeting our current needs as well as our future needs. Making sure that whatever decisions we make in this regard are totally accessible for everybody of all types of abilities, and also making sure that we actually have the political will to enact these, because I think that's a major portion that has been missing. So let's look at the first one for a second here. That means thinking about things like our increased density, thinking about things like sustainability, environmentally speaking, and making sure that we have parking and so on for that density. Second one, oh geez, we're gonna go real quick here. Okay. All right, well, I just wanna leave it by saying it looks like the political will exists to make sure that the plans that have already been made and are very good work.
Thank you. We'll now move into a more open period of debate, and randomly drawing to lead us out here is Mr. Bonner. Mr. Bonner, I see you've been taking notes, so I'll allow you to start off here.
I'm taking notes because you told me to earlier.
I did. Listening to instruction, a good start.
I think many of our colleagues up here have talked about community plans, and we have a large number of community plans that are sitting on shelves. And as part of my opening speech, I talked about we need to, as a council, I think, and I think everybody's in agreement here, we need to look at these plans, renew them, and then bring them forward. There is so much good work done in those plans, and I think it's a crime that the people who spent all that time and all that energy on those plans, it's not being implemented. And if all we do is look at these plans and start implementing them, our city will be a much better place just in that alone.
Ms. Pratt?
Thank you. Yesterday we were meeting with some of the public in the South End, and a couple of my colleagues or people that are fellow candidates mentioned ideas from other cities, and I think it's important for us to look at best practices in other cities as well, as trying to decide how we're going to use the plans that are in front of us that are right now gathering dust, but we're going to dust them right off. I look at our downtown, I look at this beautiful jewel that we have of a downtown. It is the gateway to our community, and right now it's stumbling and falling, and we need to look at this very seriously as part of our urban planning to bring it back to life. There is so much that is in terms of arts and culture in our downtown area as well as in the rest of the city, but we can really see it start to rise up in the downtown, and I think we need to nurture that. I think it can be a real hub for arts and culture. Thank you.
Ms. Marmon?
Yes. I really think that Nanaimo is on the brink of change, and you are going to have a fantastic council in the next term. I believe that many of these candidates, we're all willing to work collaboratively, and we all have the same dream and visions to make Nanaimo better. One of the things I've heard on the campaign is people talking to me about the different neighborhood associations and communities, and having a councillor who absolutely is assigned to be a liaison with the community, so there's a clear line of communication. I also believe, along with dusting off the plans, we need to get more insight to some of the costs and the analysis, but I also agree with Mr. Bonner, the very first thing we're going to need to do is get a permanent CAO and recommit to more staffing so we can have a well-functioning city. Thank you.
Mr. Bollier?
Yes, one thing that I've heard during the campaign is a number of complaints from people about various plans that never seem to get accomplished. And I think we have to change the way we do business in the city when we come up with plans. We've got to embed key performance indicators in them. We have to have timetables to make sure things are done. Too many times at council meetings I've been to, there are no update reports for projects. Councilors randomly ask, oh, what's going on with this? And they get like a 30-second answer. We need to do better. We need to complete things that are in the plans.
I have Ms. Pratt on the list, but I'm going to go with Mr. Guda first, as he hasn't spoken yet on this.
Sure. So I just want to highlight the fact that right now it very much does seem, and I'm in the same boat of recognizing and agreeing with this analysis, that the majority of the new candidates for City Council look to have the political will to make sure that the right things get done for our communities, and looking at those community plans which have really, really fantastic solutions for the problems our cities face. But once the campaigning is over, there will be a new council, and I just encourage everybody to just stay on top of them, pressure them, harass them a little bit to make sure that they keep up on those plans, especially you guys in the media. I just want to get that out there.
Mr. Bonner?
Oh, I thought Wendy was next.
Well, we'll go.
Oh, sure.
You haven't spoken yet either.
All right, okay. Thanks, appreciate that. One of the things that I think we really need to look at as well is community engagement. It's the urban planning that we're going to be doing requires a lot of community engagement. And I think that's a key part of how we will develop. We will get the ideas from the community, and then staff will sit down and figure out how we will make those things a reality, and then council will be voting on that, based on that. So key to this, I think, is developing and working on the work that the committee has done and increasing our public engagement, and that being a priority for one of our city in the near future.
We'll go to Ms. Pratt, and then I'll pose a follow-up question.
Thank you. I think we need to keep in mind when we're making plans around urban planning that we look to the short, the low-hanging fruit, the medium term, and also the long term. We are not going to be able to do it all at once. We have these wonderful reports. They need to have timelines put to them, but they need budgets put to them too. And if the money is not there, we're not going to do it in the short term, but perhaps in the longer term. So I think strategic planning is going to be very, very important, setting our priorities and then moving forward. And that will require community engagement. Thank you.
A follow-up question under the concept of planning, and specifically many of you have mentioned the plans and the overarching document, of course, the official community plan. Recently, council was put in a position to consider a rezoning application. Now, this particular application was to rezone a property for a use that was not consistent with what the official community plan laid out for that area of town. Staff did not recommend to move ahead with even accepting that rezoning application. They put the question to council, do you want us to investigate this and move ahead? With a similar scenario in mind, not the exact same set of facts, but with a similar scenario in mind where a rezoning application comes in and staff are saying this is not consistent with our official community plan, how would you approach that situation as a councillor? And I see, let's begin with Mr. Guda.
Sure. So in the specific case we're talking about here, and of course all of these must be done on a case-to-case basis, but in this particular case, I would not have voted in favor of that rezoning, because in this particular case, I think what happened here is you've got one side whereby the community plan represents all of these things that we've been talking about. It represents outreach to the community, it represents political engagement on the local level, and then you've also got the city staff who are the local experts on these files and on why we engage in the direction that we do. And then you've got a bunch of money on the other hand. And I think that this sort of thinking, this sort of economic developmental thinking that we have is old school. The political science shows it. I think that we need to direct ourselves more towards community economic development, whereby we invest in ourselves and stick with the plans made by our community.
Thank you, Mr. Bonner. And then we'll go to Ms. Pratt and Ms. Martin.
We have a community plan, and it's there so that we can guide the development of our city. And it's created through public input and public engagement over the years. Our community plan, though, is 10 years old. And I think it's part of our, as I've outlined earlier, part of our work that we need to do in the near future, very near future, is to relook at that community plan, because things have changed over the last 10 years. Things have developed and things are working. We use a community plan to direct development, but if a company comes up or an organization or a developer comes up and asks for a rezoning, we have the opportunity at that time to negotiate what we want in a particular area. So I would welcome the idea of renewing our OCP, our official community plan, and looking at our zoning opportunities and our bylaws on zonings as ways of channeling the development of our city by giving flexibility to developers so that they know when they buy a particular property what they can do with it and what they can't do with it.
Thank you, Mr. Bonner. Ms. Pratt?
I agree that flexibility is very important. I don't believe that official community plans should be written in stone. However, I think they do need to be revisited often. I think that it's really important to put timelines on them. Things change, and we know they're changing rapidly all the time. Technology changes our community. Economic development changes our community. And arts and culture changes our community. There's all these factors that change our community, and we constantly need to be looking at how that relates to the official community plan. It's a very important document, but it does need to have some flexibility within it.
We'll go to Ms. Martman, and then we'll finish with a final comment from Mr. Beaulieu.
Some of my thoughts have been stated, but I believe all strategies and plans need to be livable working documents. With the official community plan and staffing recommendations, I believe this is when you need to put your critical thinking hat on and ask very deep questions so you have an understanding. But for rezoning of property use, there would also be the public consultation. And I find that something in our city is lacking when it comes to communication and for our different neighborhoods to be really informed about decisions that council is making. And I think going forward, we need to really be able to educate and communicate with our citizens.
Mr. Beaulieu?
Yes, I agree with many of the speakers here that we are guided by the official community plan, but it's not written in stone. When those documents were drafted, nobody could think of everything. So we have to look at the case that's brought to us as councillors and decide, is it consistent with the community plan? Has something changed in that area? And we do that through consultation and finding what the best solution is, not just rejecting something out of hand.
Okay, that is our time for this group. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you. I'd like to now call up to the stage to talk about our third theme of the night, Group E. That has a ring to it, doesn't it? Yes. Well, you are. Again, we'll begin with the 1-minute introduction, and randomly drawing first to open us for this group is Mr. Peter Kent.
Thank you. My name is Peter Kent. I am 61 years young, married to a Nanaimo Regional Hospital nurse with twin boys. I have 35 years background in the film and TV and arts industry, but most importantly, I come to you with 4 years hands-on city council experience. I know what good, successful governance looks like. I have been there. I served as chair of the Corporate and Public Services Committee, the Digital Strategy, and the Finance and Audit Committees. I have mentored for 13 years for Big Brothers. I have been a 2-time BC Community Achievement nominee, a Gemini Award winner, and the first Canadian inducted into the Stuntmen's Hall of Fame. But I want to put all of my experience to work with a focused and respectful council, to listen to the voices of those who have elected us and to respond. Elected office is the highest form of service. It is not to be taken lightly. It would be an honor to serve you on October 20th. It takes courage to stand up and speak, and courage to sit down and listen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ray Kornberger, and I am running for Nanaimo City Council. My most significant propelling for adding my name to the very long list of citizens is my son's passing, which taught me to overcome my fears, taught me that tomorrow is not guaranteed, and allowed me to know a strength that I did not know I had before. I believe my independent and critical, curious mind will be beneficial when making decisions on behalf of Nanaimo and RDN residents. I have no doubt I can serve the community because I am accountable, proactive, prepared, and have 42 years of combined education, work, and volunteerism that has unfolded a wide range of skills, life experience, and knowledge. 10 years of live radio as a host and producer has given me an insight into Nanaimo's concerns, an understanding of a councillor's role, and the procedural rules that govern the position. I wish to help lead the change that Nanaimo is craving because I have truly fallen in love with my adopted community. Thank you.
Move on to Mr. Brian Luce.
Hello, everybody. I'm Brian Luce. I'm running for Nanaimo City Council, obviously. I have a background working for fisheries and oceans and research. I've also been an environmental professional. I also have a red seal trade, and I've traveled Western Canada on oil and gas and power projects. I've seen both sides, industry and environmental. I'm raising my family here, and that is why I'm running. I feel like Nanaimo has lost its direction, and I feel that there's a population growth and an economic growth that is about to hit Nanaimo that we are not prepared for. We need to send out a message to everybody. Everybody needs to get behind the direction of Nanaimo. We need smart, intelligent urban planning. We need to increase our quality of life. As we get squeezed every day, our quality of life needs to be maintained, and we're going to do that through planning. On October 20th, please consider me.
Thank you. Move on to Mr. Jeet Manhas.
Thank you, Your Worship. He wanted me to call me Your Worship because you are acting as worship. Fellow councillors and hello, everyone. My name is obviously Jeet Manhas. Just a little bit about myself. I have lived in Nanaimo over 40 years on and off. Went to NDSS. After that, I went to University UBC. After that, I went to Calgary for a few years. Came back to Nanaimo in 1989 because that's where my roots are. And all my family's here. What I bring to this table is experience. Experience, 6 years from 2002 to 2008 on City Council, 2005 to 2008 on a regional district, 2010 to 2018 on the Port of Nanaimo. I have a proven track record from those organizations, from the City Council, on affordable housing, supportive housing, arts and culture. So on October 20th, I'm hoping that you can give me your support, and so I can bring this expertise, my business experience for 30 years in Nanaimo to the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jim Turley.
Thank you everyone for coming out tonight. I was born and raised in Nanaimo. I have a degree in plant science from UBC. In 1975, my wife Mary Ann and I moved back down from Dawson Creek and bought into my parents' business, Turley's Florist. What I bring to as a candidate for the City Council is my long-time involvement in various sectors in the community, including sports, arts, business, and social entities. I've been in a leadership position for many years, being a Rotarian president for 3, president of the City Center Association for 3 years, minor lacrosse for 3 years. You see the trend there. United Way campaign for 10 years, serving 1 year as a chair. Why am I running? I'm running because we sold our business, and I want to, I'm too young to retire, and I want to apply my knowledge and experience to my favorite city. You have one more advanced poll to vote in, so remember, vote early, vote Turley. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move into the theme and the question for this group. The theme is arguably the most topical issue in our community and many in British Columbia: crisis management, strategic thinking, and focusing on the homelessness crisis that we are dealing with. Nanaimo not unique in what we are seeing, although we do currently have what is reportedly the largest tent city in all of the province. The issue has divided our community. We've witnessed violence, threats of vigilantism, court proceedings, and even tragic happenings. The provincial government has moved in, but again, this is very much an issue that Nanaimo City Council will have to deal with. Randomly choosing to lead us out will be Mr. Turley. And the question, again, thinking under that theme of the housing crisis and the homelessness issue, as a councillor, how do you propose to deal with the crisis? What is your medium and long-term strategy? Mr. Turley.
Thank you. Well, the affordable housing crisis is not something that the city taxpayers have to fund. There are things that the city can do to make the use of the money the province is providing more acceptable. Number one, we need to prepare in a proactive manner where these sites are to be, and the important key in my mind is the actual requirements or residencies of these things, and those cannot, once the property is decided on, should not be changed by the provincial government at their whim. The other thing that we need to remember is that in the affordable housing document, again, we're talking about plans, there is some really unique suggestions for how to provide more affordable housing for the working poor. The other thing that I'd like to say is economic development, while not specifically to this topic, will help because it will provide affordable, or at least more inventory of affordable housing. Thank you.
Mr. Kent.
Thanks very much. Rising housing prices over the last decade have driven the word affordable from our lexicon. Rising rents, declining wages, cost of living increases have all contributed, and most people really are one paycheck away, including from seniors from homelessness. The province and the federal government have housing as their mandate. Municipalities only act as facilitators. So it is up to us to bring the land, the community partners, and all of this together. I know this formula because I've actually been party to it and had some pretty good successes for it. Medium term, the council must now get together and work to get these funds in for shelter, mental health, and addiction services from the province. We have to act quickly and get those funds right away. Long term, we need to incentivize housing. We need to work with developers through community amenity contributions to give us affordable housing units in the mix. If they come to us with multi-family buildings that they want to build, we say, give us 10% of those units as affordable housing. Can be in perpetuity or whatever, managed through, thank you.
Thank you. Ms.
Gee,
Kornberger?
how do I follow that answer? This crisis is long in the making, as I believe that we all know. The short-term goals is to continue on with, I think, with what the city is currently doing with the province, and that is the 170 houses that are units that will be coming available this November. Medium term, I believe, is to address the community's needs, increase community outreach, cost out initiatives, and work with businesses, service agencies, governments, and communities to mitigate the impact and reduce service gaps as stated in the Nanaimo Coalition on Homelessness, Homeless in Nanaimo Action Plan, the Nanaimo Affordable Housing Strategy, and the Nanaimo Point in Time Count. Long term is to write into the budget the cost for purchasing, rezoning, and remediating land associated with the municipality's responsibilities concerning implementing the homelessness directions. Again, finding partners, provincial and federal funding sources will be essential to reducing the housing crisis. Thank you.
Mr. Luce?
Municipalities need to focus on the preventive measures of homelessness. We need to be integrating subsidized rentals and homes into regular communities for the working class, seniors, and social assistants. We need to be building them into communities, not segregating them. We need to hold up the basic standard of society together. Long term, your drug addiction, your mental health, it is a national crisis. We need a provincial plan. We need a federal plan. We need a long-term commitment, not just to segregating them into housing, but into treatment, and we need to integrate them back into our society. We need to have value for everybody.
Thank you. Mr. Madhouse?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This council, I think this is an opportunity. We have all those homeless. I'm going to concentrate answer on homeless because that's what's the most effective topic right now. We have an opportunity. We have 300 people at one place. This council have an opportunity to take a stock, take an inventory, and find out who's there, and separate them into separate groups. Some of them easy to house, some of them are not easy to house, and the last one would be your ones that are hard to house. So if you have the plan from the city council, we take the plan over to the provincial government and federal government, because provincial government and federal government is looking for direction from your city council. They don't give you a direction, you got to give them direction, what it needed to be done. And we need to deal with this homeless issue for once, for all, and it's been because the inaction of the previous council, but this council have an opportunity to deal with that, and I think we're smart enough to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move into the more open debate portion of this topic, and we will begin with Mr. Luce, and from there I'll take speakers. And a few minutes into it, I'll pose a new question. But Mr. Luce, based on what you've heard from your colleagues up here on stage, your thoughts?
I think when we're talking about housing and social assistant housing, we do need a definition of the groups. It confuses communities and it confuses individuals. Because when we talk about assistant housing and social housing and wet housing and you prevent it to a community association, sometimes they're confused about what you're talking about. I do strongly believe we need to integrate these. When we do put in wet housing, it needs to come with all the facilities. It needs to come with treatment facilities, mental health facilities, job skill facilities.
Thank you. We'll go to Mr. Manhas and then Mr. Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, we need to have a solid plan to deal with this. We cannot, the solution that's proposed by the previous council is putting them 60 to 80 housing at the same place. That is not the solution. Solution is to spread them around and also to take charge of who they are, what their needs are, what their requirements are, because there are 300 people that's there. They're not all the same. Some of them need more assistance than others. I just learned the other day that federal and provincial government has changed the rules, giving the benefits that goes into direct deposit. Some of those people have lost those benefits because they're not getting the benefits, because they don't have a checking saving account. And that is the first thing you want to deal with, is get their benefits in their hands and get them to open up their accounts. And it is hard to do? No, it is not. We need to, working with the Nanaimo Affordable Housing Society, we need to have a bank, working with the banks, take out any bank, and to work together and get those people, get their benefits going. And then we go to the next one that have mental illness and drug addiction, and we need to have those people in a separate. So the first thing is to get those people working in the regular environment. So anybody that's ready to go back to work, probably take them 6 to 8 months, but some of them will take longer than that. So that would be the short-term and a long-term solution, having a plan presented to the federal government, provincial government, and this is what's going to require from the city council.
Thank you. We'll go to Mr. Kent and then Ms. Kornberger.
Thank you. I'd like to approach this from more of a global, higher level viewpoint. We have the affordable housing strategy that was just passed by council for 2018. There are billions of dollars, literally billions of dollars, between the Fed and the province available for mental health, for housing, for all of those things. New council needs to get into the ministry and get face-to-face time. Traditionally that's done through UBCM, but UBCM is sort of like a speed dating where you get 5 minutes with a minister and not very much is accomplished. So we need to actually go to Victoria and sit down with the ministry face-to-face, establish those relationships again. I know that unfortunately with the situation at Rutherford School, we are sort of in the laser view of the province right now. That's either a good or a bad thing, but the beauty of that is at this point, the focus is on us. I think it's time to step up to the province as soon as we get the chance and start to demand some of those monies. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. We have to start building, we have to start putting lands aside. And that is either through rezoning or through dedication or by whatever means, even if we have to purchase it. But we need to have our ducks in a row. We need 4 or 5 different locations, because the province will then come in and say, we will put this here, we will put that there, we will put that there. Some of those obviously will not work, as they did in the case of Chase River for the community. So that falls off the table. So we have to come back in again and we say, okay, and the community now gets to look at this piece. What do you think?
Couple more seconds, Mr.
Does that work for you? Yes or no? And that is how community consultation has to follow.
We'll go with Ms. Kornberger, then to Mr. Turley, and then Mr. Luce.
Once again, following Mr. Kent, he has taken all my answers. I bet you have. I agree with most of what my colleagues say, that we need to definitely identify the differences in the community, because not everyone will require the same resources. I think that our consultation with the community needs to start at the beginning, not in the middle or the end. And I also believe that we need to continue to work on our responsibilities as a municipality with purchasing land and then rezoning it. I heard Peter talk at his talk the other day about how as a council, if we rezone land, it becomes more I want to say not affordable, more likable to developers. That's not the correct word, but it's not in my head right now. So I think that that is something that we have to do as a city, is to definitely purchase land, rezone it, and then have that sort of carrot for the developers. And like Peter said as well, the federal government is just sitting on money, and so we need to go and find that as well as with the provincial money as well. Thank you very much.
We'll go to Mr. Turley, then Mr. Luce, then Mr. Manhas, and then I will pose a new question to the group. Mr. Turley?
Thank you. So there are a couple of social entities in our community that have been doing a great job over the number of years almost that I've been here. And I'd like to pass on some kudos to them because I believe they're a part of the solution. The first one is Habitat for Humanity, and I see that as a way of freeing up some slightly more affordable rental units, because these people that get involved in building their own home with sweat equity actually become homeowners and no longer need to rent. The other one, which is probably slightly off the topic, but I think it's important, and that is the issue of food and feeding the people. Many of you probably saw on TV last night there was a young gentleman in Kelowna that had this great idea that he's going to cause grocery stores to recycle their food. Well, we're miles ahead of them here in Nanaimo, because the Loaves and Fishes, I think they are recycling or refurbishing food for consumption from grocery stores. I think the last figure I saw was close to $5 million worth of groceries each year. And I would like to take my hat off to them. What they really need is people to go out and volunteer in their facility to sort food. Our Rotary Club does it in about 2 hours a month, but they need a lot more help to provide good food for people who need it.
Mr. Luce and then Mr. Manhas.
Just to comment on the developers and rezoning, I think we all need to remember that Nanaimo should be the envy of the world. We have deep sea port, an airport that can expand. When these developers come, the city needs to sit down as a council and tell them what our vision is, what our values are, and what's our principles. If we need affordable housing for the working seniors and assistant class, we tell them that that's going to be in their plan. With the mental health and drug addiction, once again, it's a provincial, federal. We need a long-term plan. We just don't need money. We can't just keep spending money. If there is not a long-term direction for what that money is going to do, if you are not taking drug addiction and homelessness and mental health out of the picture and reintegrating them, what are you doing? You're going to spend money here, you're going to put them on the outskirts of society, you're going to spend money there, put them back on the outskirts of society. That is not a plan. Spending money is not a plan. We need to gather this as a national commitment to this issue, because it affects every municipality. All the municipalities on the island need to unite, because it's not going to be solved alone by us.
Thank you, Mr. Luce. Mr. Manhas, final thought before I pose the next question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, on the affordability, I don't think there's any money available from provincial and federal government. It's up to the city council to decide. And I think the way to increase the affordability is to increase the density. How are we going to increase the density without compromising the integrity of the neighborhood? The plans that we talked about earlier, Chase River, Bracken, South End, all of those plans are sitting on the shelves somewhere. It talks about increasing the density in those neighborhoods. And that's the first thing we need to do, is look at those plans and how we can increase the density without compromising the integrity of those neighborhoods. And on the homeless issue, it's not just a city council issue. It is the community issue. We need to get the community on board. Any plan that we do, we need to have the community on board first before we go out. Something that's happened in the last few weeks, couple of weeks, there's 2 sites picked. And a lot of the people I talked to, they didn't know about it. We need to have the neighborhood, we have the community on board first before we go out. And the projects that during my council terms we did on Wallace Street and on Meredith, we went to the neighborhood first and told them that we have a site that's suitable because it's close to bus stop, close to grocery.
Manhas.
Thank you.
Really quickly, I'll address this to all of you and give you each a chance to speak to it. When the provincial government announced 170 units of temporary supportive housing for the city of Nanaimo, the Minister of Housing urged City Council to allow Tent City to remain until the housing was prepared. That is mid to late November. The court-ordered injunction, which the city fought for, allows for the city to evict that site as of last Friday. How would you, as a councillor, have voted on that issue? To allow the camp to remain until the housing was ready, or to move in and enforce the court order in an expedient manner? Who would like to open us out on this? Mr. Manhas? Again, please be brief on this. We're up against time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, I'm going back to the opportunity that we had. Previous council had an opportunity to take a stock of what was there, and they spent all the money on legal battles and finding out when they can evict those people that are there, rather than having a plan. And now the provincial government came at the last minute after the court injunction was issued. So the council showed no leadership right at the start, and this is the issue that council needs to show leadership. How are we going to resolve that? And how are we going to, it is provincial, everybody talks about it is a provincial issue, but it is in our backyard. We need to deal with it ourselves as a community, as a council. So the tent city, I don't even call it tent city, it's a homeless camp. We need to have a plan for those people, the vulnerable people that are in those places. Yes, there are some are activists, that's okay. If you deal with those genuine people that are there, those activists will go away. Thank you.
Mr. Turley, and then Mr. Kent, and then Ms. Kornberger.
Thank you. So the first thing I would do, it would be, first of all, speak to the lawyers to make sure that their opinion states that the court order can be extended, because if it can't, it becomes null and void, which puts us back right in square one, which is not where I don't think we want to be. So my understanding is that the group that asked for the court order cannot necessarily go in and arbitrarily ask for an extension. The one that's being applied to can, which I understand may have happened in this case. So if we find out it's okay, then we would have to consider a short extension to allow for triaging to determine who goes where.
Thank you. Mr. Kent?
Thank you. And I know this is quite an unpopular decision to say, but I would keep the camp where it is. And the reason for that is spreading the homeless out into the community at this point does not serve anyone. We lose people. Some people who have actually are registered through groups like United Way, et cetera, and are actively seeking homelessness, actively seeking housing, are at risk of being lost in the mix. There is a plan, there is housing available, and it is coming. Although one thing that I'm a little bit concerned of here is that the consultation on the terminal location, I see that the province came in and dropped that in there in a hurry, and I don't think that there was any consultation throughout the community as to whether or not they wanted that there. And I understand the immediacy and the need for that housing, but I think that there needs to be, on the provincial side, at least some kind of a warning, or at least a chance to sit down and offer some consultation on those locations before something is just surreptitiously dropped into the neighborhood. And that's just my thought on that piece.
Thank you. Ms. Kornberger, then Mr. Luce.
While my personal opinion would be to keep Tent City where it was until they could go through and find out who would be in the units, the city must follow the law and what the court has decided. And if if the city does not follow the law, then they are held liable for the things that could go wrong. So I know that the city currently is talking with their lawyers to find out if they can go back to court and have the injunction stayed for a bit. But that would be my decision, would be to follow the court so that the city is not liable for anything. Thank you.
Mr. Luce, final thought?
I just want to make a comment on the city issue there. If we were the best in the world at this issue, if we were the best, we would be broke in 2 days, because all of Canada would come here. It is a national, federal issue. For Tent City staying, if not for compassionate purposes, it makes fiscal sense. What we need to do is support the surrounding community with bike patrols, We need to enforce with bylaws. People walking down the street do not want to be asked for money every 10 seconds. We need to be compassionate but firm. Nanaimo needs to decide on what our standard of society is. Nanaimo decides to decide on the image we want to show the world, and we need to protect the people that are also living and working here. This cannot be the overshadowing event that is all of Nanaimo. We cannot let the world see this every day.
Thank you very much to this group. Thank you. I'd now like to bring up to the stage to discuss our fourth theme of the night, Group A. We're on time. That's all I'm worried about. All right. We'll begin with the 60-second introductions. And randomly drawing to lead us out for this group is Mr. Gary Corbin.
Thank you for coming tonight, folks. This is an important election. They all are, but this one is particularly important given the last 4 years. You're going to have a new council in November, thank goodness. And most of them are going to be brand new people. Most of them will have little or no experience in municipal government. And believe me, the first year for a new councillor is a learning experience beyond compare. I think there should be at least one person like Lloyd Sherry who used to say to the new council members, this developer shows pretty pictures but empty promises. I want to be that experienced councillor. I want your support on October 20th. I have 15 years as mayor, 9 years on council. I've practiced law in this community for over 20 years. I would like your support, and I want to be able to act on your behalf. I believe I have a responsibility to give back to the community that has been so good to me. Thank you very much for coming.
We'll move on now to Mr. Bill Manners.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Bill Manners. I've lived in Nanaimo since 1970, and I believe that we should be getting more out of our government and the services that we pay for with our taxes. I've been an avid city council watcher for quite a few years, and I have a high level of knowledge and understanding of municipal governance that's required to be a councillor. I want you to elect me as a councillor so you will get someone that will communicate with you. I will address your concerns, and more importantly, I will respond back. We live in an electronic age where we can communicate. Let's do it properly. I joined the Community Engagement Task Force for that reason. I want our next council to work to provide the best for Nanaimo. Nanaimo is entering a new phase. We are moving from a city of less than 100,000 people to over 100,000. Our next council needs to improve our image, and I want to be a part of it. With my background and knowledge, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peter Urquhart.
Hi everyone, I'm Peter Urquhart. I've lived here for 30 years. I'm a software developer. I work on medium to large size enterprise business solutions. It sounds fancy, it's pretty technical, but what's really important about it is that I need to pay very close attention to the things that I do. The things that I do affect the bottom line of the business directly. I have to work with stakeholders. We have much different needs. It can range from the technical end to the government end, to the private stakeholder end. in the community, this is something that is this is my passion. When I step out of the business side, I spend a lot of time in the community with assisting with initiatives. I run on the board of a few committees and societies. And I just want to say that, to finish.
Mr. Tyler Brown.
Over the last several weeks, as I've been door-to-dooring or meeting folks at the different community events, I've had people commonly refer to me as the urban planner. And that is absolutely true. From my volunteer activities to my education to my experience, I am dedicated to improving the livability of our cities and our communities. I'm a father, husband, committed community member, committed volunteer, and a born and raised Nanaimoite. But more importantly, I'm a believer. I believe in an open and ethical government. I believe in a strong local economy is the key to our lasting prosperity. I believe that whether you are 8 or 80, everybody is entitled to an equitable, healthy, vibrant, and sustainable city. And I believe that the energy in the air this election is because now more than ever, we all believe in Nanaimo's future. I'm excited about the next 4 years because when we work together, we can confront the challenges that face us. By working together, we can make Nanaimo the best mid-sized city in British Columbia.
Thank you. We'll now move into the question and the theme for this group. They randomly selected our fourth theme, fiscal resource management, taxes, budgets, asset management. Municipal governments, as we know, have limited sources of revenue and increasing pressures to deliver services, maintain aging and ever-expanding infrastructure, and support a community's development and vitality. Randomly drawing to lead us out to answer the question is Mr. Urquhart. The question, as a council member, how will you approach the key task of managing city resources?
Thank you. I'll try and speed this one up a little bit. So what we're really talking about here is the budget. Something that I was mentioning about in my work is I focus on software development. This involves a lot of efficiencies, and efficiencies don't just carry through software development, they also carry through some of these things that we hear about, such as the core review. This can be very scary for a lot of people, and it can be a tool that can be very misused. Some people look at it as a reason to cut jobs. I don't look at it this way. The core review is there to really identify efficiencies on the best way to use our resources. It's not about losing jobs. It's not a scary thing. And it's something that we need to do to be responsible with our budget. We also have a shortfall of $258 million. We need to look at this very carefully before we start embarking on any new projects, because while we've taken care of it by 1%, we need to do more with this.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
So we have a $180 million annual budget, and 58% of that comes from property taxes. In order for us to increase the services that we know people want, obviously we can't keep on taxing higher. So we need in my opinion, we need to be implementing smarter development patterns where we're actually deriving more taxation from each hectare of land. So by doing so, we can still have the services that we like, the services that we enjoy, and start to work towards the services that we do want, those new investments, but without inappropriate taxation that burdens future taxpayers or through inappropriate borrowing. The prosperity for our community will not be built with one single project, especially when it costs $80 million. It will be developed and it will be realized by incremental development over time that is smart, tactical, and efficient. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Corpin?
You, every one of you, and your 96,000 fellow citizens will contribute $180 million in revenue to the city coffers this year in property taxes and user fees. Does anybody in this room think you're getting good value for that money? Well, if you have any doubts, just check out the quality of the roads as you drive home tonight. We are being ripped off by people tearing up our roads and infrastructure and not repairing them to a quality industry standard. And you're paying the price for that. We have an opportunity to make sure that the budget is analyzed in detail. I will recommend to the new mayor that he uses a line option return to the council for a recorded vote, so you know who is wasting your money on specific items. Believe me, as having been involved in Nanaimo City Council for 24 years, I know budgets and I know where people hide things, and I want your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
To defend you.
Mr. Manners?
Along with other members of council, the management of your money is foremost in my mind. Staffing and the resources need to be invested in now. And we must work with care to stabilize and reduce the long-term costs. Our strategic plans need to be revisited. Our cost development charges have reached a reserve fund of $42 million. We need to fund our infrastructure associated with the growth in our community. We should be using part of the reserves to build sidewalks in our communities rather than using $300,000 a year from asset management. Our asset management is set up to take care of our infrastructure going into our future. We shouldn't be spending it today. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move into the more open portion of this topic, and again, focusing on fiscal resource management, taxes, budgets, asset management. Randomly selecting to begin on this part of this theme is Mr. Manners. So I'll allow you to effectively continue, and then we'll go from there on any that want to weigh in on this topic.
As I was mentioning just a few seconds ago, our asset management plan is set in place. We have 1% that we're putting away each year. It's being added to 1% at a time. Our community development and vitality is being set by our staff. We need to look at the plan that they have and see how it's going to work for us in the future. As an incoming councillor, I know that there are going to be many surprises. Every time we elect a new government, we find out little things that we didn't know. There are things that were discussed in camera. There are things that city staff have discussed. Previous councillors, such as Gary Corpan, being the mayor and a councillor, he knows what they are. A lot of us don't coming in. And it's going to be news to us, and it's going to be news to you. Transparency will help you find out what those dollars are all about. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Mr. Corpin and then Mr. Brown.
All right, thank you, Mr. Manners. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
The core review that the council partially implemented should be analyzing all the efficiencies for all of the departments equitably and objectively, so that you know, and the council who acts on your behalf knows, that you're getting the best value for the money. We have about 700 full-time equivalent employees for this community. $60 million in salary and wages go from your pockets into their pockets. We want to make sure that we have quality services, and we need to have a proper management team. It's been eviscerated by the current council using your money to oust people prematurely. A professional staff that was once the envy of Western Canada has now been made a mockery. We've got to change that. If we get the staff that's professional, objective, and nonpartisan, we will get a budget that we can rely on and we can act upon with some confidence, as opposed to the disgraceful discussion and subterfuge that has happened, particularly these last 4 years. I'll carry on later.
Mr. Brown?
So I want to build on that, Bill Manners' comment there about the 1% asset management annual. That's not how you do proper asset management, by picking an arbitrary number such as 1% and working from that. What you do is you look at the replacement costs of your assets in the long term and work back from that to get the appropriate taxation, so you don't have to borrow, because everybody knows when you borrow money, you end up paying more. With respect to what Gary Corpin there was saying around finding taxation, or looking at and analyzing taxation, I think we need to be, go a little bit beyond that and actually look at past decisions and past land use management practices, which actually have resulted in not the best efficiency in terms of how we can generate taxes from a parcel of land. So You know, there's only so much you can do by looking into the past. If you actually want to achieve responsible, efficient, and effective taxation, you have to look to the future and how you can do it better. Thank you.
Mr. Urquhart?
I'd actually like to touch on some of the stuff that Tyler's spoken about here, because I also think we need to turn this around into a positive way. This is not all doom and gloom. There are ways out, a way out of this. So for example, one of the things, and we're very lucky, we have one staff member that's doing our in control of the Economic Development Department. This is something that got taken away as part of the core review. It was not recommended, but that was how that tool was used. This is why I spoke about this at the start. I believe that we need to rebuild an economic development task force, and the reason for that is to start building the community with business, working with the city, so that we can start to energize things a little bit better and work on a solution to revisit our Economic Development Corporation. Now, as we know, the more businesses we build here, the more growth that we make, that assists our tax base, and that reduces our overall infrastructure needs. Now, there's one more piece to this as well, and this is key, and it's our infrastructure. We need to move into medium density, mixed use, these types of things here, because when we're sprawled out, our return ratio on the infrastructure that we need to put in is it's very poor. So the tighter that we can get things in while keeping community spaces, keep things very nice for the neighborhood, but tighter, this will help improve our bottom line.
Thank you. I'll go to Mr. Corpin and then Mr. Manners.
Most candidates for political office will tell you, after giving some listening to what you asked about, they'll tell you what they want to spend your money on. I've observed that there's a number of people in public life who have no trouble spending other people's money. There's some people who can't stop spending other people's money. It's your money that's being used. You need someone on council who's going to say, is this good value for the taxpayers? Is this a priority for the community as a whole? Or is this some payback for some special interest group that got some of the members of council elected? You need to find out who's endorsing who. The unions in this community are endorsing certain candidates. Are they bought and paid for? Or are you getting independent people who are going to represent you as the general community? You have a job to do.
Thank you. We'll go to Mr. Manners, and then I will pose a question to the group. Mr. Manners.
Peter mentioned economic development. I'm a firm believer that we need to build up our economic development office. We need to have more staff working in it. We need to be promoting Nanaimo as a place to do business. We want more businesses coming to Nanaimo that pay better than minimum wage. We need residents living in our city that are earning more than minimum wage. We have a lot of people that are not making enough to get by. They can't afford a house. Not living in a house means they can't be paying property taxes. Their taxes that they're paying are going through in their rent. If we want to increase the revenue in our community, we need to bring business to get more people working to move our economy ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Manners. I'll pose this to the group. Most recently, when budget deliberations were undertaken by this council, some of the surplus was used to lower the tax increase that was proposed and projected. Staff were adamant this was not the most effective approach. However, who would like to lead out on that? Mr. Urquhart?
So I think it's very important that we pay attention to our staff and what they're saying is needed here. We have financial experts here. These are not the councillors. These are ones that have spent their time, their whole life, putting this together. And when they say that we need to put aside this money and keep it, it's essentially quite often for rainy day funds. These rainy days come. We've seen it here. We've seen it in our snowfalls that come down, all kinds of ways. I don't support taking money out of these kinds of funds. They already come out when they start to get beyond a point of what they need to be reserved.
Thank you. I'll go to Mr. Corpin and then Mr. Brown and then Mr. Manners, and keep in mind this will likely be your last round on this topic. Thank you.
How many times have you seen politicians at a candidates meeting say, I'm going to keep your taxes low? And then the first year they get in office, they give you a big boost in taxes and hope in the last year that they're in office that they can keep the tax rate under control or lower so that you will re-elect them. The fundamental question is, you need candidates on council who will look at the budget and say, why are we spending this money? Is this a priority, and are we going to cut this out of the budget? There's a lot of waste. We're getting ripped off by a number of unworthy recipients of your subsidies, and we haven't had the backbone on council to stop it. If you want someone on council with a backbone to speak out on tough issues and is prepared to make a vote that counts to save you money, you're looking at me.
Mr. Brown and then Mr. Manners.
I think it's always important that when you identify you're being ripped off, to identify where that rip-off is actually happening.
Okay.
But moving on,
Sure.
I think it's Peter touched on a good point, and that is really about responsible taxation. So, you know, if there is discussion around where the money is coming from or how you're going to achieve a certain taxation rate, ultimately that discussion needs to be one of values. What is the value of a particular service? And you know, that's a dialogue that happens at the council table. But arbitrarily, like this last council did about keeping a certain trying to achieve a certain number with no real consideration of how they got to that number other than just trying to axe anything that could be approved. That's not appropriate or responsible taxation.
Thank you. Mr. Manners?
Regarding the surplus, taking money to keep a low tax rate, 2 words, absolutely not. I've never understood the word rainy day fund. We live in a rainforest. We get rain every day. I don't know why we're saving it for a rainy day fund. We should be spending it accordingly. We have reserves. The reserves, I believe, are put for planned and unseen circumstances that are going to affect us in the future. We need to hold on to those reserves. There's a reason why there are reserves. We can't be just taking the money and spending it to lower the tax rate. Our last council, for example, has had low tax, low tax, low tax, and for 2019, your tax rate's going to go up. And the reason that is because they are not going to be there to be responsible for it. I think that we need to vote people that know about budgets, know how to spend your money, and spend it like it's their own. I'd like you to vote for Bill Manners. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Manners. I'll give Mr. Corpin 20 seconds to respond.
Just in response to Tyler's comment, if you want the specifics of how you're being ripped off, go to my Facebook site, Gary Corpin on Facebook, or NanaimoNet.com, and you'll get some eye-opening, disgraceful, in my mind, examples.
Thank you. Thank you to this group. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to bring to the stage our final group of the evening to debate our 5th theme, group number C, letter C. Thank you. Yeah, you're there. I'm in the middle. You're in the middle. You're on the end, Kevin. You're right here. Down. All right. We will begin with the 60-second introduction of the candidates, and randomly drawing to lead us out on the introduction is Mr. Gesselbrock.
Hello, my name is Ben Gesselbrock. I grew up in Nanaimo, and I want our community to be successful. I'm a registered clinical counselor with a master's degree, and I've worked in the prison system. I also own and operate a tree service company that hires young adults facing barriers to employment. Working for the benefit of this community is important to me. I've served as a board member of several local nonprofits and as a regional district committee member, I've helped develop our region's solid waste management plan. I've also co-founded the Mid-Island Community Development Co-op, which is an organization that works for the health and sustainability of our local neighborhoods. I'm running for council because I believe that with more collaborative leadership, we can meet the needs of our growing city. Nanaimo, for me, is important, and I'm committed to a vision of a Nanaimo that's livable, that's environmentally sustainable, and full of opportunity for all generations and walks of life. Thank you.
Thank you. Go to Miss Darcy Olson.
Hi, I understand the struggles many families face today. Finding a safe home, a good paying job, affordable daycare options, and a way to get to work. We need to rebuild. The new council needs to start by ensuring our city staff feel safe and rebuild on the experience we have lost over the last 4 years. We need to rebuild our community committees that have been lost, from our Economic Development Committee to Arts and Culture, both economic drivers for Nanaimo. I believe we need to attract new investments, good jobs, and create a progressive vision and plan for Nanaimo. We need to bring back investors and who decided to invest in other communities, promote clean industry, and support our tourism and arts culture sectors. Rebuilding community partnerships will be an important task for Nanaimo's new council with Nanaimo First Nations, Chamber of Commerce, Nanaimo Port Authority, VIU, and the Airport Commission. We need all those partners at the table.
Thank you. We'll now go to Mr. Michael Ribasek.
Hi, I'm Michael Ribasek. Thank you to the organizers for this great opportunity tonight. I am from Nanaimo, and I'm running for City Council because I am passionate about our city and have always been motivated to make a positive impact in our community. I want to help build a Nanaimo that has a great transportation system, a Nanaimo that takes affordable housing seriously, and a Nanaimo that is rich in culture and heritage. My experience on various boards and committees, my knowledge of local governance, my political studies education, and my extensive volunteer contributions position me to bring a professional, thoughtful, and youthful voice to the council table. On October 20th, let's make Nanaimo a city we can all believe in. Vote Michael Ribasek for Nanaimo City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Noah Routley.
Hello, thank you. My name is Noah Routley. In the course of all my work, my focus has been on helping others. My mom tells this story. When I was really little, people would ask me what I wanted to do, and that's what I would say. My dad was a big part of that. He has been in political office 30 years, and last 8 years as an MLA, and to have a mentor like that who speaks about listening to the community, actual hearing, and then putting that into action. That is what I do. I have a Bachelor of Science in Psychology. Since that point, I have managed a group home and been elected as one of your school trustees in 2014. So I have the expertise moving forward, and the community, we need your voice on council.
Thank you. Mr. Kevin Story.
Hi, folks. For me, it's all about experience. I'm running because I'm offering you my experience. Along with 2 terms as an elected council member on an actual functioning city council and 3 years on a regional district, I can bring that to the table on your behalf. I've got 20 years or over 20 years in the construction business, starting as a laborer and working myself up as a contractor. I've managed multi-million-dollar complex construction projects, and we're spending millions in capital projects over the next few years. We need somebody there that speaks the language. So, also I've been representing this community and dealing with senior levels of government. I hear a lot of talk about housing tonight. I gave a plan to the Premier of the province on the 19th of July this year, and we're seeing the results of that now. So time is short. I'm asking you to vote for the old guy with the experience, and on the 20th, let's get it done. Let's get this town going again. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now get into the theme that this group randomly selected. It is the Regional District of Nanaimo, the dual governance role, and regional development. Of course, of the 9 council members who were elected on October 20th, 8 of them will become members of the RDN board, and the other will serve as an alternate. The 19 members in total on the RDN represent an area that spans from Mount Arrowsmith to Qualicum Beach to Cedar. It's a very complex and demanding responsibility. We'll begin with the question, and this is being led out by Darcy Olson. The question: what do you see as the key issues and priorities for the city as part of the RDN?
The interest of City Council in the RDN should go well beyond the borders of Nanaimo. And these are our neighbors. The RDN includes transportation, our watersheds, landfill, and the sewage treatment plant. Nanaimo councillors hold the majority of votes, as just stated, in the RDN, and when it comes to money, City councillors need to discuss and develop agreements on the agenda items that impact the city, and staff should be aware of the RDN issues and provide good advice to the councillors that sit on the RDN. I'll end it there, sorry.
Mr. Rybicek?
So when it comes to the priorities for me, it'd be first of all making our transportation system more adequate by advocating the provincial government to give us more hours for additional hours. So that's happened recently. There was 5,000 additional hours given, and that went to the Route 40. So first we need to make sure that we're actually trying to make the existing routes more sufficient, and then start building up to actually be willing to add more routes in general. And then we also need to work to modernize our bus system here as well. So by that I mean working closely with BC Transit and getting a system in place similar to that what they have in Vancouver, where you can even just tap your debit card to pay. And lastly, to the other question there, we need to make sure that we're working closely with our allies on the RDN to make to kind of build up to there being more connections to other buses. So going to Qualicum and all that as well, because those people can come over here and contribute to our economy, and we can go over there and contribute to theirs more easily. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Routley?
Thank you. Many of us tonight have spoken about community consultation and the need for open, transparent governance. And that brings me to our association with the RDN. We first of all need to really hear from the community about your priorities. Reviewing our community engagement pieces, it's really obvious that the community is guided in the process, that the process has closed questions. I would advocate for decisions to be made in open meetings so that the community understands, as councillors, what we're advocating with the RDN. We need to think outside of the box towards busing, housing strategies, and I really propose differential taxes. We need to actually think outside the box.
Mr. Story?
Thank you, Dominic. Folks, I agree with Michael. I think the first thing that we need to look at when we're discussing the regional district is the transit system. It's ridiculous if you live in the south end and it takes you 2 hours to get to work in the north end. So we really have to make improvements there. But we can go beyond that. We can coordinate services between the cities and the regional district. We should be coordinating economic development, coordinating a building code so that we all have the same building code. Housing and social housing have to be coordinated throughout the region. And we also really now keep this in mind, folks, that we're going to run out of property here within the next, say, 20 years. We have to be looking at possible amalgamations down the road and the ramifications and what that's going to cost. And last but not least, we must protect our watersheds. It's the most valuable resource we have. So I'm a get it done kind of guy, and I would like to see these things get done in the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gesselbrock?
Thank you. Yes, the RDN is a critical place for collaboration and regional collaboration, and the city and the council members that are part of it must make sure that we're engaged, that we can have access to the resources that we're paying for. At the regional level, ensuring that our transportation obviously is a critical element, and I think that we need to go to more to ridership model. As a member of the Solid Waste Management Plan Advisory Committee, the RDN set a 90% diversion target from landfill. I think that this is critical that we strive for this goal so that we don't have to run into a situation where we need to site a new landfill or have to look at options of incineration. Lastly, protecting our watershed is critical. We live in one of the most beautiful places in the world, and we need to work with all stakeholders at the table, with the private landholders of the Nanaimo River and other regions, to make sure that we're moving forward to make this place beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gesselbrock has drawn also to be the lead out on our debate on this topic. So I heard several of you talk about transportation, specifically transit, and I think that everyone is in agreement that Nanaimo's transit system needs work. It needs improvement, especially connecting some really critical routes. So I would pose for debate how you envision effectively lobbying at the regional level to improve the transit, and also maybe a route that you think is the most important connection to address right out of the gate. And we'll start with Mr. Gesselbrock.
I mean, obviously, people have been talking about the connection to our ferries, to the airport, even to Ladysmith as critical routes. However, getting people on to work on time is very important, especially on Sundays and times when stores are open and people that are needing that employment have to get there. A model, we're currently using a coverage model for transportation, and I think that we need to switch more to a ridership model that focuses on the major routes and increases the frequency of rides along those routes to improve ridership. And I think that's an important policy shift that we need to look at.
Who'd like to go next? Mr. Story?
Thank you very much again, Dominic. I agree with Ben on a lot of points, and the ridership issue and the type of ridership that we offer to our citizens. Today I announced on my page on Facebook that I would like to see a seniors committee established for our city council. And our seniors have very special needs when it comes to transit. And there's a model in Vancouver right now where you can reserve a small shuttle or a bus to come to an area and pick up 5 or 6 people at a time, instead of relying on the handy bus to come by. So I'd like to see that implemented. The main route that I think that we really need to coordinate are the 2 routes that go through the center of town from north to south and from south to north. Because people there, we need to meet a schedule. It's no sense having a job in the north end that starts at 8 o'clock in the morning if you can't get there. So we really need to think about that, folks. We need to use common sense when it comes to transit. You know, get me onto council, I'll use that common sense, and like I say, we can improve transit and so much more. It's common sense, experience are the key in this election. You know, I could stand up here and say all the fancy words and sound like I'm tremendously educated, but what it comes down to is I've got 68 years of common sense behind me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll go to Ms. Olson and then Mr. Ribisick.
Goes back to community input again. We need to start looking at the old plan that we have in place and realizing that it doesn't work. We need to target you people and ask you what you need. We need to commit to a transit committee that is also going to hear your voices on a broad sense. I too am concerned about seniors being isolated and the fact that we have homes that are created for our seniors, yet we don't have transit in front or anywhere near or accessible. They're having to walk 2 blocks uphill. Our handy dart system isn't allowing for people to be picked up in a timely manner to be able to go back to their homes. They're waiting an hour to an hour and a half after an event and possibly missing out on their lunches or their dinners, plus the inconvenience of sitting for an hour and a half after your planned event with friends. So I believe that we need to take a look at our demographics. We need to figure out how it is that we're going to get people to work if we don't provide them with an accessible transit system. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Mr. Ribisick and then Mr. Routley.
Well, kind of going back to what Darcy just said and what Kevin was mentioning earlier, we need to look at some of the senior homes in town, because many of which do not have the privilege of having a private bus system. So without that transportation, that public transportation, a lot of them are stuck at home, and they don't want to be at home, but they have no choice because they can't handle walking to where the nearest bus stop may be. So we need to explore that as well. But going back to kind of to what Ben was saying too, is that when it actually comes to getting more additional routes and things like that, first of all, I really do believe that we need to focus on what's broken first. So if there's a route out there that's not sufficient enough, we need to actually work towards adding more hours and more sufficient services to that first before we start expanding outwards, because that's obviously something we do want to achieve soon, but first let's just fix what's already not working.
Thank you. Mr. Rutley?
Step one, I do like Mr. Bonner's report, and that is attendance. We need to show up. We hold a majority vote, and therefore we actually we can progress. I love what's been said here today. People with disabilities, people that need affordable housing, they need a good transit structure, and we need to be there. I now have the ability to be a full-time city councilor, and I think that's really important. As Nanaimo grows, that need is becoming ever more clear. That's something we need moving forward. I think really with the poverty and the housing rates where they are, transit is definitely something we need to look at. And like I said, developers like A&B Sound that are just sitting on their properties, they should be at a higher tax rate, and that money can be used for transit. We need to think outside the box, we need to innovate, we need to get community solutions, and I really believe that as a group, we actually have a lot of solutions here. We have a lot of brain power in the room, and so that's what I would bring to the RDN.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mr. Story?
Thanks again, Dominic. Folks, we're talking about cost efficiency in a lot of these items. And when I talked about, cooperation between the city and the regional district, if we cooperate with economic development, if we operate with the same building code, if we have services that are provided throughout the regional district under a standard format, we will save millions and millions of dollars. I built in Victoria for quite a number of years, and there's 5 different jurisdictions down there. Every time I went to build a project, I had to deal with a different building code. And the cost of just administering people on my staff to take care of those building codes was horrendous. And we can avoid that here by making our building codes compliant with those of the regional district or vice versa. We can duplicate our economic development and split the cost because we're bringing that wealth and new business into this area, not just specifically into this city. So we should be sharing in that cost. And above all, government services and housing, we have to share those out. We're having problems in Nanaimo finding land for affordable housing. Why aren't we looking in the regional district for places for affordable housing on a bus route, close to stores, close to doctor's office, but not necessarily inside the community? I've suggested a treatment center for Nanaimo in the Nanaimo area, not inside the city. Thank you very much.
We talked a lot about issues, challenges, problems, things that need to be fixed, but the fact of the matter is we live in one of the most amazing places in the world. Looking at it from a regional perspective, again, not just the city of Nanaimo, but the regional district, what do you see as the number one opportunity for this region, and how do we maximize it and effectively move forward with it? Anyone? Mr. Gesselbrock?
I think that's correct that our rural lands and the lands surrounding Nanaimo are a very precious resource, and I think our opportunity is to be proactive. For example, places like the Nanaimo River, to start establishing parklands. We've got more and more people that are moving to our community and are starting to go and recreate into the surrounding regions, and we need to have those areas properly managed, because as more people go out, the chances for things like forest fires and disturbances to the wildlife increase, and we need to extend our reach as a regional district, and with Nanaimo contributing to manage it properly.
Thank you. We'll go to Ms. Olson and then Mr. Rutley.
We have to be also concentrating on our food sources. Nanaimo carries 3% of its own food. That's it. That's all we have. And in the regional district, it's part of our agricultural land reserve. And in lots of these areas, people are wanting to create parklands where we should be creating a more sustainable food source. So I agree, we need to make sure that our rivers are safe so our salmon can come up and spawn, and also make sure that we ensure that our farmers that are already in place are supported by the RDN and the City of Nanaimo so we can continue to have hay for the dairy farm and food for our tables.
Thank you. We'll go to Mr. Routley and then Mr. Story.
I think this is a step in the right direction to see this many people here tonight that are just really wanting to see change, wanting to see a progressive council, a council that listens. I think that the community, once we actually renew our strategic plan, that strategic plan is very out of date, a decade old. I think that things have changed. Affordable housing, looking at homelessness, looking at these community issues are now important, as well as being heard from, our community engagement process. So I really believe that that is gonna move us forward, electing folks that are gonna listen and then act. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Story and then Mr. Ribisick, and we're up against the clock, so Mr. Ribisick would be our final thought on this topic.
Okay. Thank you. I agree with Noah regarding the public consultations. About 3 weeks ago, I made the commitment that the first thing I would do would make a motion to council that we hold meetings, the coffee-style meetings throughout the community once a month so that we can get your input. And we could get that going in the regional district as well. Going along with what Ben said, our parks are really the number one thing that we have to offer people in this community besides our waterfront. So development of regional parks is a must. And we can use Nanaimo as the core community where we can bring the people in, they can stay in our hotels and our accommodations, and then we can bus them around or various transportation around Nanaimo and also around the close regional district. And we can have the benefits in the hotel tax dollars coming into our municipality by inviting people into our community and then showing it off. Let's not be afraid to show it off, folks. We live in a beautiful place. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ribisick?
So I think when we go to the RDN, a lot of us are just going there with Nanaimo's interests in our minds, which does make sense. We are representing Nanaimo to a point, but we do have to actually work in collaboration with all the members of the RDN and see what their interests are. I think that will open up proper dialogue between each other because we actually all share a lot of common interests, and we can work together to actually achieve these goals for all of our municipalities. I mean, one of them, as I mentioned earlier, would even be just having a more sufficient transportation system that connects our municipalities better. So there's always that room for dialogue. We just have to make sure we're actually open to it and that we're willing to all work together.
Thank you very much. Thank you to this group. I'd like to thank all of you for being here this evening. Thank you to our Nanaimo and the Greater Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce for hosting this, as well as the mayoral debate last week. A reminder of voting opportunities. Wednesday, the final advance poll, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Bowen Park Auditorium. And then, of course, general voting day on Saturday, October 20th. Please employ your friends, your family, everyone. Let's get out and vote and boost our turnout numbers as best we can. Thanks for having me. My name is Dominic Abassi from NanaimoNewsNow.com, Nanaimo's undisputed news leader. Thank you. Yeah, our council candidates will be in the room. Feel free to come up and speak to them if they're going to be here.